Hi. In the course of our last discussion of the Sutra 61122, Sarvatra Vipasha Goho, I mentioned that I might follow up with a brief further discussion of the nature of Vipasha. As you might remember, 2 years and about 100 videos ago, we discussed the Sutra 1144, Na Veti Vipasha, Na Veti Vipasha, Na Va Iti, which is pretty specific. Na Va, thus, gets the name Vipasha, the two taken together. And I mentioned that while this can become a somewhat complex topic, that I thought it was best at the time to stick with what Prabhakara Shastri gave me at that time in our studies, which is to say, Vipasha is a sanya, meaning optionally. Now, even at that time, I wasn't looking for trouble, so I was okay with taking that at face value. At the same time, there was a little tickle of curiosity because is that really the easiest way to say optionally? Especially since va inherently means optionally? Well, I think it was just as well at that point to leave well enough alone, but we have just moved on to Sutra 61122, Sarvatra Vipasha Goho. Sarvatra Vipasha Goho. In the case of go that ends with eng, and since eng is A-O, go ends with eng, not goho, go. When short follows, there shall be staying as it is, optionally, everywhere. So those are two interesting ideas, optionally, everywhere. And we talked a bit about what everywhere means, and the fundamental meaning is both in Veda and in Bhasha, meaning everyday language. Okay, that's fine. So going back to 1144, na va iti vipasha. There's more to say about that. Now, how much this matters, and it probably doesn't matter a lot for us, especially since we're focused on the operation of the grammar. But it's interesting, and at this point, I think it's worth at least hearing what these different components of Vipasha have been considered to be. So there are three major flavors of Vipasha, and one occasional fourth flavor, I'm calling them. Now, we will, after talking about these briefly, we will also go into the larger topic of what optional means. And I have some of my own thoughts about that and how it can confuse things, at least for me. So the first of these four flavors is Prapta Vipasha. Prapta Vipasha. Now, keeping in mind that Vipasha is an official part of the grammar's own lexicon, it is sanya, it's named Vipasha, and the name is Natva, that is Vipasha. So these terms are not sanyas. They're over the 2.5 millennia. Obviously, people have lots of time to think about and parse things. And these are some of what they have thought. So prapta vibhasha applies to vibhasha of something that was previously obligatory. So a sutra that made an obligatory injunction when subsequently referred to as vibhasha becomes optional. Aprapta is concerns a sutra which has neither been clearly defined as obligatory or optional. That is called aprapta vibhasha. And then, of course, there is the inevitable prapta vibhasha, which may be either obligatory or optional, possibly both, vibhasha. So, well, for one thing, this is not a problem for us as we learn the grammar, because we don't learn the grammar by looking to see whether somebody said a vibhasha was prapta or aprapta. Actually, it's the other way around. People say something is prapta or aprapta or prapta, having already understood what is going on and finding it interesting to categorize the vibhasha. But these things are observations about versions of optionality, you could say, that have already been established through the grammar itself. Now, as I think about this and try to communicate something potentially useful, it seems to me that I was misled or I misunderstood in ways that others have as well, including scholars of the grammar of much greater wisdom than me. I think I was confused by the idea that Naveti Vibhasha says Vibhasha means optionally. And that leads to confusion because it's not true. Vibhasha means one thing, na va, taken together, but applied separately or in conjunction. And the reason that's confusing is that there are many versions of optionality, you could say. And so the ones that are called vibhasha are explicitly understood as n-va, and their application will reflect that. And then there are the other, I guess you could say, more mundane versions of optionality. One is va. I don't think there's no sanya that I know of, may have missed it, but that says va means va, it's just va. And similarly, anyatarasyam, these just mean optionally, and they are not uncommon. And now there's a final category that we have come across as well. They're referred to, I think, in Kashika as pujartam, for reverence, to revere a scholar, a previous grammarian who is named. So as we've seen several versions of this already in our studies, and what I was taught was that the naming of the grammarian had a twofold function. One is respect, and the other is to say, yes, so-and-so, Pishilehi, thought this. But that also means there's other things that he didn't think that about. So that makes it effectively mean optionally. And then there are sutras where there's both. So 6192, we recently did Va Supishalehe, Va Supyapishalehe. So there you have Va and Apishalihi, its name. In that case, the logic, it makes sense, is that Apishalihi is strictly pujartam, for reverence, because Va is explicitly saying it's optional, and a shout out to Apishalihi. Now, the next sutra we're going to do is a little bit of an interesting wrinkle on this from my point of view. That's 61123, Avongs Portayanasya. Avongs Portayanasya. Now, Spotayana is another grammarian. And what Spotayanasya means, Spotayanasya mate. In Spotayana's opinion, thoughts, meaning that it's optional, and it's shout out to Spotayana. What's a little bit interesting to me in terms of the tradition is that the tradition holds that Vipasha comes into this sutra from Naveti Vipasha, from the other one we just did, Sarvatra Vipasha Goho, which is the preceding sutra. Okay, so that's plausible, but it almost seems as though the tradition has made a point of that explicitly to indicate that Spotayana here is pujartam. Because since, as we know, everyone forgot Swarita and Anunasika, and so Anuvritti is always the judgment of the wise. So there you go. There are these flavors of Vipasha which reflect subtleties, but ultimately, while I think translating Vipasha is misleading because there is an interesting force to the na and va of it, but according to Professor Sharma, whose word I trust, attempts to rationalize or make some specific meaning out of these differences have not proven effective. And the takeaway is, the one very important takeaway is, they are all equal, because anything that is in Ashtadhyayi is by definition correct and must be correct. So they're all ways of getting to optionality with some interesting flavor along the way.